Many will remember the brutal conflict that engulfed Kosovo in the late 1990s, and there is a real concern that tensions in the region could rise again between Kosovo and Serbia. So we've come to Pristina, the capital of Kosovo, to meet its Prime Minister, Albin Kurti, and get a sense of how genuine these fears really are. There are concerns about President Vucic of Serbia's close relationship with Putin, and whether Putin is looking to cause trouble behind the scenes in order to distract attention on what's going on in Ukraine and get people looking to a regional conflict in the Western Balkans. You spoke about the need to have more NATO troops on the border with Serbia. Do you think the UK isn't doing enough, and not just the UK, but the West in general, to protect Kosovo?
UK is part of NATO, and they act and operate in that fashion. I believe that there should be more NATO troops in Kosovo, because there are 48 forward operation bases around our country on the side of Serbian territory, and each one of them has 50 to 150 soldiers and officers. And they are there as a horseshoe, which used to be inside our country 25 years ago, when they were doing genocide against Albanian people. And now they are waiting for a new window of opportunity to attack us. No wonder that in December last year, President of Serbia was showing public admiration for father and son Aliyev, leaders of Azerbaijan, recalling that they have been waiting 27 years for a historic window of opportunity to get into Nagorno-Karabakh, and likewise Serbia should wait to get into Kosovo. Therefore, we need to increase our capacities and capabilities. We are doing that. We have already allocated over 2% of our annual state budget to defense. But more engagement from NATO, I believe it's welcomed and necessary.
Have you asked for more engagement from NATO? Have you requested more troops on the ground?
Several times. I did that much earlier than terrorist Banjska attack in September 24th last year. And I did that for the very first time before Russian invasion in Ukraine in September 2021. When a Russian ambassador in Belgrade, Aleksandar Vucic, came at the vicinity of the border between Kosovo and Serbia to inspect the amassing of troops, Serbian troops, when we had this crisis of car plates. Above them, there was MiG-29, Russian airplane, as a donation of Russian Federation to Serbia.
And you said you've asked multiple times. Who have denied this to you?
Well, they have increased it a bit, not much.
So is it a token increase?
I think it's a symbolic increase. It is substantial in the north, but generally it's symbolic. And I think that more NATO troops in Kosovo on one hand, and clearer and firmer stances of democratic West, not only NATO, towards Belgrade, would contribute a great deal to peace and security, not only in our country, but in the entire Balkan region.
By not giving Kosovo more NATO peacekeeping troops to protect the border with Serbia, is the UK failing to learn lessons from what's happened in Ukraine?
I believe UK is not acting outside of NATO in this respect. And there are reasons for such approach. I believe that NATO presence in Kosovo is the key deterrence factor in relation to possible future attacks of Serbia, which will be a reoccurrence of the same, because these attacks we have had in the past. I believe that NATO could and should be more engaged in Kosovo and around Kosovo, both militarily on the ground and politically in its clear and firm stance towards official Belgrade.
Could you not argue that with more than 4,000 troops in Kosovo, you are well protected?
We are well protected, but we could be even better protected. With 381 kilometers long border between Kosovo and Serbia in mountainous region, where 16 illegal pathways have been closed down in last couple of years for smuggling ammunition and military equipment, obviously there is a challenge. There is a security challenge. And this security challenge becomes security threat due to Belgrade's stance and pattern of behavior and of activities, which are terrorist and criminal. Therefore, I think that more attention and more presence would help both Kosovo and NATO, also bearing in mind that we are part of each other's history. In the history of Kosovo, you have NATO. In the history of NATO, you have Kosovo, due to 25th anniversary this year of NATO intervention, which stopped Serbian genocide in spring 1999. Serbia in the Balkans plays the role of Little Russia, whereas Republika Srpska plays the role of Little Belarusia. And Vucic behaves like Little Putin, and Milan Radojcic, who was heading this paramilitary terrorist attack, behaves like Little Prigozhin. The Russian Prigozhin is dead. The Serbian Prigozhin is alive in Serbia, at large, free, protected by government of Serbia and their police and military forces. So situation is dangerous. And I think that we cannot think that whatever we do, we can make things worse if we engage more. The opposite is true. If we engage more, that will serve as deterrence factor. And in general, in terms of proxies, Kremlin in Northeast Europe has Belarus. In Southeast Europe has Serbia. Why the Western Balkans is in danger, perhaps even more so than some countries that we could think of in the neighborhood of Russian Federation, is because in order to cause another conflict elsewhere, a Russian army would have to engage directly. Whereas in Western Balkans, they wouldn't have to engage directly. They could outsource their aggression to Serbia and to Republika Srpska. So that's why the situation is dangerous. It's very attractive for Kremlin to be able to outsource its hegemonic and aggressive policy to someone else. In this case, it would have been Belgrade.
And you spoke about a window of opportunity. Do you believe in the foreseeable future Vucic is looking for an opportunity to invade Kosovo?
Well, he's daydreaming live and publicly about it. So I know that very often he doesn't speak truth, but when he says such things, he's actually giving a certain orientation to its police and military and intelligence and extremists in the society. So it matters a bit less whether he really meant it 100%. Autocrats, they never understand generosity. They always misunderstand generosity for fear or weakness or both. Therefore, if we show that we are being generous or that we are making certain concessions, they will ask for more. In this sense, they are both autocrats, but with different possibilities.
What do you mean about the generosity?
Well, whenever you do some concession, whenever you do not put sanctions, whenever you do not condemn some violation of the agreement or regrouping of military troops or military exercises, immediately they see it as a new license for old ways of doing politics. For example, in 2021, Serbia and Russia Federation, they have had together 104 joint military activities out of 91 that they have been planning. The two most notable being Slavic Shield and Slavic Brotherhood. So they are going to this kind of pre-modern ethnic kinship in creating political and military bonds. Previous Serbian parliament had a Serbian-Russian friendship group where 40% of MPs were members. We have different friendship parliamentary groups where a dozen of MPs participate, but never 40% of a parliament. And Gazprom, Lukoil, VTB, Rosatom, Roscosmos, they are all present in Serbia, and 56% of oil industry of Serbia is owned by Gazprom. In terms of energy, military, political cooperation, there has never been more links and stronger links than nowadays between Belgrade and Moscow.
You said about, working with partners. I think it's fair to say that you've annoyed some of your partners, the US, the members of the EU, saying you're no longer going to trade with the Serbian dinar. I know that was the central bank's decision, but you are the Prime Minister, so surely you could intervene knowing how much upset it's causing. What do you say to those that don't think you're doing enough to integrate the Serbian minority within Kosovo?
On 27th of December last year, Central Bank of Kosovo made a new regulation in order to enhance the integrity of our banking and financial system. We want to fight illicit activities, financing of the terrorism. Only last year, on September 24th, we have seized over 5 million euros of value of ammunition and armament. So we want to have legal system in place. And Article 11 of our Constitution says that only one currency can be as a mean of payment, namely euro. We are not banning dinar. Serbs can keep their savings in dinar, but to pay, to exchange, you need euros. It is important to note that Serbia recently have put 4 ATM machines around the border of Kosovo, which shows that when there is a will, there is a way. But on the other hand, they've chosen the worst option. Serbs go on the other side of the border to get cash dinars. What we want to do is to have, by moving slowly but surely towards cashless economy. There is no one in Kosovo, according to Tax Administration of Kosovo's new law, that receives his or her salary in cash, only in bank accounts. We have 10 commercial banks, 2 of them are Kosovar, 8 are foreigner. So let Serbs use them as well. We don't want to ban dinar. They can receive financial aid in dinars, but in our banks, they're going to get them exchanged into euros. There is no resistance from Serbs of Kosovo. Serbs in Kosovo are 4%.
Yes.
They are not 40%. They are not 14%, they are 4%. And I want to respect them, and I want to have all the well-being shared with them. No one should be left behind, no discrimination, even though we have a lot of privileges for them.
The brutal violence that Kosovo saw in the late 1990s is something kind of really prominent in a lot of the West or the world's memories. And you were a student activist during that time. It led to your imprisonment and subsequent release under the former President Milosevic. How has that experience and those very formative years for you reflected in the way that you govern Kosovo today?
I believe that from the lows of Serbian prisons, which were more like concentration camps to us, war prisoners, I've learned Serbia much better, and Serbian language for that matter. So I think that paradoxically, it helped me to know my neighbor turned into adversary because of their stance much better than it would have been the case otherwise. On the other hand, it helped me survive in very difficult circumstances, which perhaps managed to be part of my political intuition out of this pretty unique experience.
And you said that their prisons were more like concentration camps. I know that you did suffer torture while you were there. Can you talk to me a bit more about that?
During month of May 1999, we were so many Albanian prisoners that even the offices were turned into prison cells. Within pavilion number 4 in prison of Lipjan, there were 13 of us in one room. This room was quite small, without any beds. We were just sitting all day long, and it was not possible to lie down and sleep in the evening. We were just sleeping while sitting, and the size of the room was like 5 yards with 2.5 yards. 13 people for over a month. They brought 1 loaf of bread at 11 a.m. and then another loaf of bread at 5 p.m. for 13 people. And they were always listening behind the door to see whether we quarreled for the bread. We were getting some cups at the bottom of which there was a soup. And I remember that we were very careful that all the crumbs of the bread fall in this cup, so we lose nothing. But due to tortures in that period and in the aftermath in Serbia, I've lost 30 kilos. So always my weight was between 80 to 85 kilos, whereas at that time I fell to below 55 kilos. And we didn't have a bathroom, toilet. There was only a bucket that we could use. And every day one of the inmates would go to throw it out, and you would always get beaten. And 2 cans of water we had per day. Whoever went to fill them with water always got beaten. And sometimes we were not able to bring both cans of water in the cell, because if you were losing consciousness while getting beaten, they used that water to throw at your face. Right. So, and those were horrible times. I was a student activist, and I was secretary of Adem Demaci, at that time political representative of Kosovo Liberation Army. He is our Mandela, passed away 6 years ago, but he was 28 years in prison himself during former Yugoslavia. And President Vucic at that time was Minister of Information of Milosevic, propaganda minister. So he is still in power. Now I became Prime Minister, and I have no hatred. I have no hatred for Serbs. But I wish Serbia changes its stance and its approach towards Kosovo. We normalize relations. I believe in justice without revenge. I don't believe in revenge. If there is revenge, there can be no justice.
How many days were you in prison for?
I was 2 years, 7 months and 10 days. 1 year and 5 months I was during period of Milosevic, and then they didn't release me when the democratic changes in Serbia took place, because with the amnesty law that followed, they've missed the article with which I was sentenced to 15 years, namely Article 116 of Yugoslav law at that time, endangering territorial integrity and sovereignty of Yugoslavia. Even Bill Clinton, Madeleine Albright, Wesley Clark, Jacques Chirac, Tony Blair, Gerhard Schroeder, they were all sentenced. Javier Solana, they were all sentenced with this same article with which I was kept in prison. Of course, they were sentenced in absentia in Serbia. So after that was removed, but many people forget today that there was this country in Europe where Bill Clinton was sentenced 20 years in prison.
Lots of people that went through the horrific torture that you did would have had therapy to kind of deal with it. It's quite clearly the markings of post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, how did you learn to cope with what you experienced? Did you ever speak to someone or get help?
Not really, but it is a common phenomena in our country because over 700,000 people of Kosovo in the 80s and the 90s went through Serbian police in one way or another. So more than 1/3 of the population. So there is no medical department that would be able to handle and treat 1/3 of the population. However, we learn to cope by staying together, by engaging in our struggle, and by trying to use it to make your soul rather noble and to read books and try to understand better.
And there were 13 people in your small room. Are you still in touch with any of them?
Yes, of course. A couple of them passed away, but others are alive. So, yeah.
And do you ever talk about what happened, or is it kind of buried?
Well, yes, we do talk about that. Whenever we meet, there is this evocation of our memories, and we are not hiding, or we are not reserved in speaking about it. However, you know, people want to move on with their lives and not get stuck in the past. The problem that we have in our country that there are too few processes against these directors of prisons turned into concentration camp during occupation and NATO bombardment, and of these guards who were ill-treating, torturing systematically prisoners. And they always tried to create ethnic conflict out of what was their political order. For example, when we were transferred from prison of Lipjan in Pristina on 10th of June 1999, together with police and military forces of Serbia, we were put in red buses of Niš Express, Serbian company, within the military convoy of Serbia. So they were using us as a human shield towards NATO bombs. And I was sent to prison in Požarevac, which is ironically Milosevic's hometown. And immediately when we entered the prison, they were beating us for a couple of hours. And on that occasion, one of the prisoners died from Jakova because he has been also wounded from Dubrava prison, another prison earlier. So he was wounded and he died during those tortures. He was in the same room where I was. And I remember one of the guards saying to Serbian prisoners who were in their cells watching from the windows over the bars of their cells, did you like the show? So in the big yard of prison, we have been massively beaten, all of us, from Serbian policemen turned into prison officers. And I was there when one of them was shouting to the Serbian prisoners, telling them, did you like the show? They always wanted to turn ethnic difference into a conflict, when actually The conflict was a consequence of the political orders that were given. Serbian prisoners, they did not attack us, even though there were some very notorious criminals among them who did very bad things. Perhaps they would like to engage into this one, but however, I always consider that it is the uniform of a Serbian policeman which is the figure of the violence against us Albanians, not ethnic difference or cultural difference as such.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.